Well, good afternoon. This is Dan Bell. I am sitting here with Byron Morgan, President and CEO of Vinylmint. We are in Norfolk, Virginia, in Byron's studio off of Granby Street in downtown Norfolk, one of two locations. And Byron, I want to first of all thank you very much for the opportunity to interview you today.
Thanks for having me.
This is a really, really cool space, and we're going to take some pictures and show them while this audio is playing. But how long have you been located here?
For about 2 years now. I think the first half of the year when we first started up, we were working out of coffee shops. And then we got into an accelerator program down at Hatch, Norfolk, which is actually at the other end of Granby Street.
Yes, I know it well.
And from there, we were always working out of this space. We used it as a mailing address, and then we saw an opportunity to capitalize on creating a studio environment that would complement our clients, especially providing the voiceover talent, ISDN line access, and providing musicians a place to produce music and so forth here locally. So it really helped with building community around our brand.
Well, that's great, and folks, this is the real deal. I mean, this is a sound studio with professional equipment and stuff that is just unbelievable to me. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Why don't you start us off with just giving us a little bit of background about yourself, and then ultimately how you got involved in Vinylmint.
Sure. So I was a military child. I was born in Petersburg, Virginia, actually, where literally I only spent 6 months, so I couldn't tell you much about it.
What branch was your mom or dad in?
My father. He was actually in the Army.
Okay.
And we moved up to Meadville, which is a small city outside of Erie, Pennsylvania.
Well, that one I know.
And stayed there until I was about 2, and then from there moved to Europe, which is where I grew up.
Where at in Europe?
I stayed in Germany, in Grafenwehr, and I also stayed in places like Poland and France while I was there.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
I've been there several times over the years, mostly for business. That's outstanding. A lot of people don't realize the beauty and the culture and, of course, the history in Europe.
Oh, man. And the funny part about it, while I was there was so much going on.
Yeah.
I mean, you had the formation of the EU taking place, the destruction of East and West Berlin, right? And the formation of Berlin. I mean, and the transformation of all these currencies into a single currency, and the Czechoslovakia turning into the Czech Republic.
That's amazing.
And Slovenia. So it was a lot going on.
A lot of history happening, right? When you were there.
Exactly.
And how old were you when you moved back to the United States?
We came back around 4th grade, so it was 5th grade. So I was probably about 10 or 11.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 or 11.
You had things to talk about in school that a lot of kids don't.
I mean, I would remember reading things in the history books, and like, oh man, I remember being there.
That's wild. That's wild. That's memories of a lifetime.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
So tell us more and how you got to where you are today with Vinylmint.
So
whatever you feel like.
Yeah. So coming back to the States, we were in essentially the middle of the hip hop culture takeover. Right. And a lot of friends that I had were very much into hip hop, and in the neighborhood that I lived in, there were some people that had some affiliations with some well-known artists at major hip hop camps, like Rough Riders and what was the other? And Wu-Tang.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So they would produce stuff for them, and I would write songs for them, and then they would end up using them on records that they were using, that they would use.
Yeah.
And I never understood the business model behind it, right? Until about graduation. And I saw a bunch of friends who were starting to get either local deals or were starting to create buzzes for themselves in the community. And they would always say, well, Byron, what are you going to do with this, right? Obviously, you're all right. If you want to do it, it's just nothing to it but to do it. And I really didn't know how to jump in. So I started planning events for a lot of those people, which is actually where I started my first company. It was a company called Live Star Entertainment Group. And
when you say events, you're talking about engagements, entertainment engagements, concerts, and whatnot? Yeah.
Bookings. So I would start booking my friends at different venues in the area. And it actually went very well, and to the point where I got the chance to actually book some B and C list artists that were emerging, that are now, I mean, mainstream icons. People like Trey Songz and Chris Brown.
No kidding.
Yeah, so that
you
was
worked with them back in the day when they were just coming out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And from that, I got my first internship working at the Virginia Pilot, and from there, I got a chance to plan a launch party for a magazine release for them that was over at the Town Point Club.
Jeez, okay.
Yeah, so there were a couple. There were people there that obviously saw that, asked who planned the event, and of course, my name came up. So then from there, I started planning corporate events.
Okay.
And I had a great first year, but I was also in college at the time. At Tidewater Community College.
Excellent.
And I was finishing my degree, and I had to make a decision. Was I going to go on to college, or was I going to transfer? And I had just gotten into William & Mary and UVA and JMU, and some of my mentors were saying, look, you need to go to college, right? I mean, this is fun. I'm sure it's fun.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job, but there's a lot more to learn, especially if you want to progress in the media business. So I took the advice, ended up closing the business, and literally just learned all I could about the media business. So I worked in telecom after that. I worked, of course, with the Pilot and periodicals. I worked in radio. And then after graduation, I worked for a record label. And that's when I really learned the mechanics of how the media business works and how it's essentially consolidating and converging on one another. And that's where I saw a real opportunity for Vinylmint. And we'll talk more today about how Vinylmint has evolved, but that's essentially where Vinylmint took birth.
That's fascinating. And so you started up Vinylmint in what year?
I started Vinylmint in May of 2011.
May of 2011. Yeah. And so now tell us a little bit more about Vinylmint.
So Vinylmint started with its first iteration, creating a recording tool that would allow pretty much all the recording softwares to collaborate with one another, because that's still a very big issue today. Getting people to be able to collaborate with one another without the geographic location prohibitions.
So essentially, you're talking about collaborations that can be international.
Exactly. So we set out to do that, and we got a lot of press around it in our first year, being featured at Demo, being featured at the TechCrunch Disrupt conference. So we were on the Dog and Pony show, and like I said, got a lot of press. It built community very fast. But the interesting thing about our product is that we didn't yet have a revenue model. We were focusing on building community, and if we built community fast enough, we could essentially raise the cash to essentially enact the business model that we had been planning on. Didn't go according to plan, so we essentially had to pivot and figure out the business model and how we could essentially grow this business with the community that we had. And
that was again an international community.
It was.
And so music collaboration, you're talking about people that can lay out a track of guitar music, lay out a track of drums. Is that what you're talking about in terms of music collaboration?
That's exactly it.
And basically stitch together a piece of music as if everybody were sitting in the same room.
And that's exactly what we had. We had a recording tool that literally people could layer different tracks and vocals in on from different locations.
That's fascinating.
It was fun. It was awesome. And I mean, it was a great demo to give because it really came to life in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
You could perform a song. We would perform songs on stage with an engineer in a different place while we were in a New York or in a San Francisco.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get the ramifications. So you could literally say, I know this musician in Budapest, and he's just the best thing since sliced bread. I can't afford to go over there all the time. He can't afford to come here all the time. So through your Vinylmint software, you guys can collaborate internationally. Is that essentially the types of things that are happening?
That's what version 1 of the technology was. But what we had to do in the pivot is, again, we had to discover the business model. And that's when we saw a real opportunity in becoming a broker. because there were lots of creative directors in the community, and there were lots of musicians and voiceover talent in the community. But we had not yet monetized that relationship. So what we did is started exploring different business models that were starting to emerge around the idea of crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
And that's where Vinylmint as it is today came from. We essentially have an RFP model similar to how the military sends out bids to contractors, or Elance and 99 Designs.
I know 99 Designs.
Right. That sends out jobs to their designers or their work freelance talent.
And so, and I'm not going to do this justice, but Vinylmint is to the music industry what 99 Designs is to the graphic industry?
That's exactly it.
How about that?
That's exactly it. But our clients, because the industry is converging, are typically is the creative director, and the creative director is typically similar at an ad agency, a music publishing house, or a game development firm. So those individuals have become, the creative director has become our client.
So now let's talk about the markets that you're serving through Vinylmint V.2. So what are the markets currently? Who are your clients? What markets are they in, etc.?
So we typically work, like I said, with ad agencies, music publishers, and game developers.
Okay.
And those currently, our product has been serving a lot of U.S. based firms that have specifically been in New York, California, and in Virginia, here in Richmond and in Virginia Beach. And the good thing is they happen to be top 50. All of these are top 50 markets. So there's enough volume in the clientele to create real traffic and real traction for the company. However, our talent base is a global talent base. We have talent about a little over 4,000 sound designers is what we call them, in over 20 plus countries. So we have a pretty robust community that can do everything from voiceovers to translations to music and sound effects as well.
So let's talk about some examples. So corporate commercials, right? So not that you have to mention any of your clients, but if a company like Pepsi wanted to do a commercial and they needed voiceover talent, that could theoretically be one of the applications for what you do.
That's exactly it.
And you could use talent that was anywhere
around the world. And the other part of that about that is that it allows us to personalize the content to whatever target audience or whatever accent or whatever country they were trying to reach. So if they needed an Indian accent, they could get an authentic Indian accent. If they needed a sitar player, they can get an authentic sitar sound for their content.
I mean, I'm no expert, but that sounds like a compelling business model to me, and it's working for you so far. And you've got a second location in Richmond.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about when you moved into there.
So this was actually the beginning of the year, a couple days before the first, and it was a strategic move. One, because we partnered with an incubator there called 80 Amps, that is working with the ad agency known as the Martin Agency.
I've heard of them.
Pretty big agency. They one of the top agencies within the conglomerate of IPG. There are several. I'd say there are about 4 major ad conglomerates in the world that include Omnicom Publicis, IPG, and a Japanese firm, and the other one is WPP. So there's collectively they own tons of agencies. Richmond is a hub for the advertising community, partly because of Wieden Kennedy, as well as the Martin Agency being there, and the top advertising school in the country at VCU. So it's a very vibrant community with a subculture that supports the arts. There's also a large independent record label there in Black Iris. So there are lots of cool resources that we can take advantage of in that area, as well as begin to build great relationships within the advertising world through some top agencies that are here in our backyard.
What an exciting market to be in, and I mean, some of these names. I don't know if a lot of people realize that Richmond was such a hub for that activity. Has that been like that for several years? Or?
It's since the turnaround in that city, there's been a lot of interesting moves being made. You see a lot of Fortune 500 companies that are moving into the area, which are also clients because there are creative directors that work, that create e-learning content or all kinds of different things within those companies. And like I said, VCU becoming a presence. It has the #1 public art school in the country. The Brand Center has emerged as one of the top advertising schools there. And then you have U of R, and you have UVA down the road.
Oh, yeah.
You have William and Mary to the south of it. Yeah. There's all of this brain power that's there, as well as Richmond is pretty wealthy. There are a lot of individuals that are investing in the city now, and then of course you have these staples who support the arts community. So it's like I said, it's a very, very vibrant community that's created a subculture that's growing, and I think is going to be one of those things, because it is the state capital, is going to be one of those things that gets a lot of national attention over time.
I think that's great. So you know, this piece and the like pieces that are up on the website are talking to young prospect entrepreneurs, people that have launched their company, have taken it through the incubation stage, are in the growth phase, and helping to provide some of that mentorship to fledgling businesses or people who are thinking about getting into that. So tell us about. Let's go down some of the questions that are related to how you started your business, and let's start off with what were some of the toughest challenges that you faced in terms of, or the hardest part about launching Vinylmint.
I think the hardest thing about launching Vinylmint was identifying resources you could take advantage of without having to trade cash for those resources. Because I think, you know, oftentimes, you know, entrepreneurs may start with a budget or they start with no budget. And cash can easily kill your dream. If you don't have enough of it, or you don't have it.
Oh yeah. I mean, look at the investment that you've got in this studio alone.
Right.
I mean, it's significant.
It is, and so those things are very, very important. Well, cash is very important. So learning how to tap into different resources without cash has been one of the biggest drivers of our success. And the biggest reason why is because it keeps our costs low. When you don't have to worry about paying for something, then of course that's not a line item in your budget for cost.
So why don't you expand on that a little bit, Byron? So give us an example. Are you talking about like bartering, exchanges of services? For Vinylmint will do this for you if you do this for Vinylmint, that type of thing?
So it was a couple different things. Getting into programs like the Microsoft Biz Spark program, which has given us a lot of technical cost efficiencies, not having to pay for development softwares or server space or things of that nature, literally for about 3 years now. Until you've reached certain thresholds that they've set.
So they're doing things to help.
Oh, most definitely.
Microsoft.
I love Microsoft.
Microsoft is doing things to help propel businesses forward.
Oh, most definitely.
And that's the name. And the name of that program again
is the Biz Spark program.
The
Biz Spark
program. Yeah, I must say I've never heard of that. Maybe many of the entrepreneurs out there have, but I have not. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and like I said, I champion Biz, just Microsoft in general. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting with their new CEO, Nadella, because I think he has a pulse that the marketplace is changing for enterprise software. Companies are getting smaller and leaner, which means that Microsoft, in order to stay relative, is going to have to create softwares and solutions that serve smaller, leaner businesses, that make them more agile. So with those things in mind, that presents a great opportunity for younger companies because they want to attract us. And the way they're doing that is they're giving their stuff away for free.
I got to tell you, and this may be a poor example, I'll lay it out, but I've just converted to Microsoft Office 365.
Oh, it's awesome.
My goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a desktop, I have a laptop, I go on the road, I've got different devices. Getting that all synced was a horrible experience. I've moved to Office 365, and it's only been since January, and yet, just like anything else, there's a learning curve. We'll talk about the learning curve in your business and growth curve, but you got to get used to it because it's a different look and feel and does things differently, via Exchange. But I got to tell you, I mean, you can be anywhere, and you've got all your applications, all your Microsoft applications, your Outlook, etc. You can log on at anybody's computer. You've got your identity, and you don't even have to have a device with you. And even if you, they're replicated. Everything is the same. So that's an example. I mean, Microsoft Office 365. I'm sorry, folks, this isn't a Microsoft commercial, but we're just sitting here chatting. But it's a great business tool.
It is. It definitely is. But that program has been helpful for us. Also, just getting into other programs that have provided us professional services, organizing a board of advisors that can give us great strategic advice without having to pay for that type of advice. Right?
And they do that. They do that as well, or you have to
these are all things that we essentially have to do.
So we talk about like Hatch. We know that's an incubator, and then there are things called business accelerators, which are there's some common elements in terms of shared workspace and collaboration space, etc. But the difference is that accelerators are for companies that have already emerged from the incubation space, have been in business for a while, and they're ready to grow. They're ready to expand.
Correct.
So would you say that you're a company that is more in that acceleration phase, ready for growth, poised for growth?
Yeah, we actually we got into Hatch at about going on almost 2 years now. We got into Hatch, and at that point, that's exactly where we were. We had formed a team, we had begun working on the product, and now it was really about figuring out the product market fit. And that's essentially what happened. And again, we got those resources that allowed us to keep costs low, as well as a seeding from Hatch itself that also helped with development costs moving forward. So using all those things, one, it allowed us to depress our costs and focus on how we were going to grow this thing, which also funded our dog and pony show around the country.
That's awesome. Okay. So when companies talk about incubators and accelerators, at some point in time, there's oftentimes young companies get into discussions with seed capitals, venture capitalists, etc. And they want to, if there's a growth phase that you need $200,000, maybe not $20,000 or $5,000, but you need $200,000 to capitalize. It's one of those things. In exchange for cash, you get a percentage of ownership, etc. You give up a percentage of ownership because the financial people need to see a return on their investment. What do you? And then we're kind of going off track, but it's still part of the conversation. What are your thoughts and advice to young businesses about getting involved with capitalization from external entities?
I think it depends on your product. I think it's really hard to create consumer products today. And if you're creating a consumer product, you're probably going to need cash very, very quickly because you're exhausting so much in giving the customer what they want, and the customer's needs change so quickly. And the other part of that is that scaling quicker than your competitors is going to take large cash investment. Because now you're not just competing. If you created a consumer product here, you're also competing with somebody in Japan that created a consumer product for you, and for that same demographic, and somebody out in San Francisco that created this, and they have access to large capital reserves. So that's one thing. so industry and the industry is important, right? If you're creating consumer products, if you're creating an enterprise product, I think it's more about benchmarks and creating a cash flow value. And when thinking about it from that perspective, it's kind of, it all comes down to how big of a business do you want to be at that point in time. Do you want to own a lot of a little bit, or do you want to own a little bit of a lot?
The old little fish, big pond, big fish, little pond scenario.
Exactly.
I mean, those are great points, and so it really all just plays into your decision about what you really want from the external community and how big you want your business to be, and of course the market that you're in.
That's exactly it.
So let's talk about the growth curve. So you basically started in May 2011, and here it is 2014. I mean, how have you managed your growth curve over those past 3 years?
So I think I want to say in the beginning of 2013. We had to make a real decision because that was when we were making our product pivot. Were we going to continue on this consumer product track, or were we going to take advantage of the community that we had already built? So with that, we essentially really we of course made the change in our business model, and from there it's been awesome because of one, aligning our business with the market trends in these industries and how creative directors are now working, especially moving away from agency rate models to more project-based models in all these sectors that we've seen the creative director work, whether it be a music publisher, a game developer, or an ad agency. So in seeing that transition, we essentially had a model that fit right on time with their service needs, and from that, it's been pretty much growth.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So over the past 3 years, and again, if you don't want to tell us these figures, that's your prerogative. But how much have you grown over the past 3 years?
I mean, it's literally been tens of thousands of dollars that we've seen.
Several percentages.
Right.
Then.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So let's talk. I'll tell you what. I'm looking at the clock. We've been on for 26 minutes, and we've got a ways to go. I mean, we've only scratched the surface. Most of these interviews are 30 minutes long, and I enjoy talking to all the entrepreneurs. This particular interview and talking to Byron is it's so interesting and fascinating because of the industry that you're in, and I've learned things that I would never have had the opportunity to before. So
that's awesome.
So when we talk about the financing of your startup, and you talked to some degree about the exchange of things to get you started, but you still needed some cash.
Yeah, we did, and I'll say that comes from the founders first and foremost. I think all cash early on, especially in the initial stages or when you're first starting up, should come from the founders because it shows who has skin in the game, who's dedicated to this thing, right? So founders funded, we started, and then we've had the success and the help of local angels, from being partners at different firms or executives at larger corporations in the area that have seen our hustle and just want to support local entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs that want to do great things that build community here in the area. And typically those will be your first angels, the people that like you and want to really support the growth of the community that they're in. So they'll reinvest through supporting a business that's growing in the area.
So they not only have to like you as an individual, but they have to like the business model that you're in.
Exactly.
And when you get those two things married together, then the possibility is there for them to
That's
support
exactly
you.
it.
And of course, bootstrapping yourself.
Exactly.
Skin in the game. I have personally put in this many thousands of dollars or whatever the number is. That's a demonstration that you're committed to making it happen.
That's exactly it. And you're gonna have to do it. And you may, work a job on the side or work 2 jobs on the side.
That's right.
But you hear stories all the time about entrepreneurs who may have been a waiter at night or who, have done countless odd jobs, to make sure their bills are paid so they can run the company.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So who would you say helped you the most as you were you're formulating your idea, and you've got version 1 of your business, you've got version 2 of the business, but who did you go to for that emotional support and intellectual support?
Well, it's I'll start from the professional side. I'll be honest. Rob Goodman, a partner over at Kaufman and Knowles, has been a godsend. I'll say I spend time with this guy who's probably billed $600-700 an hour possibly, and he takes me out to lunch because he wants to learn more about our strategy and then wants to help with the critique and the development of that strategy, and also puts the time in helping with authoring legal agreements, right? So that relationship has been a godsend.
Powerful example.
Exactly.
And you've got more of those too. I mean, maybe
most
not at all the
definitely.
same levels, but you've got people in the community that buy it. I mean, they buy the dream and they want to help you be successful.
That's it. Zach Miller, is another guy. Gary McCullum is another guy. I mean, it's been Will Levis, who's a doctoral student over at ODU now, in the New Media Studies Department. I mean, these are just examples, locally, that have been just great when it comes to developing strategy, especially from their experiences. I named a guy, Will Levis, from a personal level, has been a mentor and almost a second father, just because of the things that he's done in his life, working in the media business, as well as I've grown close to his family over time as well, and it's just been awesome to be able to just say, gosh, man, how do I think through these things, and he'll give me reinforcement spiritually, right? Which I think for an entrepreneur going through this, one of the most important things is to have a faith. And I'm not a big religious person, and I'm not going to preach religion on this talk. But I think there's something inside of you. There's an interpersonal just thing that you have to have inside of you that keeps you going. Because it's a challenge. It's a very mental challenge that you face in the growth of your business. The startup is one thing, but the growth brings new problems. It's literally like exploring the Amazon or Lewis and Clark going west for the first time. And that's important, to have this strong interpersonal connection with yourself and understanding who you are and your emotions and how you do things.
Great point. When you're an entrepreneur, I guess even when you're in any job. I mean, but in your case, there's constant pressure. I mean, there is constant pressure to keep evolving the business, making sure that the business is on the right track, your customers are happy, your product is current, and I mean, it just never ends, does it?
Yeah, it does. And you have, there are going to be times, because you're doing new things, that you may lose money that may affect other operations, right? But you have to realize, okay, what was the lesson learned in that? Because that was it. It wasn't money lost. It was the lesson learned in that for you now to reposition yourself to react. And those are very powerful lessons in entrepreneurship.
Well, and that was one of my questions, lessons you've learned along the way, and you've just pointed out that sometimes a lesson is that, I'm not making money at this particular thing. It was a great effort, a great exercise, but it didn't pan out. So just like version 1 to version 2 of your company, you had to pivot.
Right.
Sometimes you got to pivot.
That's
so
true.
Lessons are learned that not everything is a success.
Right.
Being in business, there's success and there's failure, and you learn from the failures and you press on, don't you?
That's true. That's true.
So so we've talked about some of the lessons. We've talked about risks. What were some of the obstacles in your particular business and industry? What were some of the obstacles that you faced?
I think one of the biggest things is youth. And since I essentially, although I had great experiences, it's also the validation of my track record because I am young, and a psychological change in the mindset of the individuals or the execs guiding the visions of the organizations that I'm working with. There are a lot of old thoughts and old philosophies that govern the directions of these organizations. And they have been successful because of those philosophies. However, the cost structures of their business are changing, and the vision doesn't align with the changes in their cost structures. So now it's for us to help educate those individuals that are now making those decisions, or at least making the decisions, the buying decisions. And that's where we are now, is really injecting ourselves in that process and being an educator rather than a marketer to them, but being an educator on how this business, how our business can essentially function in tandem with what they're currently doing and be a cost saving to them. So it's a lot of education. That's the biggest thing, a psychological change, and then of course getting past the idea of youth. Right, being in an assumption of inexperience.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. So and so, you know, the term "the old guard" is you know, used a lot, and that is what it is. I mean, but you got to keep proving your worth and proving yourself. As you are not a young person that believes that that he is entitled to anything. You're going to go off and earn it, aren't you?
That's exactly it.
So so let's a quick question: any professional organizations that you're involved in, or awards that you've received, anything like that? To me, this whole operation is an award winner.
I appreciate that. That's very flattering. Well, I was nominated as one of the top 50 entrepreneurs in the state of Virginia.
In the state, not the region, the state of Virginia.
It was pretty.
That's huge.
To me, I mean, that was you know, that was awesome. That's the only way to describe it.
Who does that? Is that the Chamber of Commerce?
It was the CIT GAT 50.
CIT
yeah.
GAT 50.
We were nominated as one of the top 10 fastest businesses growing in the Hampton Roads area by the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce. Outside of that, I mean, you know, just being accepted into the Hatch Accelerator program, working with 80 Amps now up in Richmond. I mean, those are also, you know, very big awards for us. We were we got accepted into the BDO Emerging Leaders program, which, you know, BDO is a top Big Four consulting and accounting firm. Just to have them on our resume is pretty awesome.
Those are some big endorsements.
Yeah, I mean, in the BizSpark program from Microsoft, we got into their second tier of the program, the Plus program, which gives you an additional $120,000 of server costs, as well as additional tiers of support and technical costs. So I mean, like, having a lot of these different awards, have given us not only notoriety and ways to leverage their brands to market our own, but also have provided us cost efficiencies.
That makes absolute sense.
Right.
Absolutely, because that's hard dollars. You'd have to, you know.
Right.
So let's shift gears. Let's talk about the job seekers, the young people out there coming out of college, coming up, and maybe they don't want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe they want to start by working for somebody for a while. Let's talk about what kind of guidance you would give to them in terms of, you know, how would they present themselves? And I'm not talking about the traditional just for success and all that, but you know, it's a challenging business market out there. And what can you tell them in terms of optimization?
I love this question because you know, people who hear this may not agree. And you know, I often get in different debates with people about this all the time. But I think the world we live in today, and based on the statistics and the way the marketplace is changing for job seekers, you will not have a job that you will retire at in 10 years, in 20 years. You will not be at a job for 10 to 20 to 30 years anymore. That reality does not exist anymore. So there are two types of people that are going to be successful in the Western civilization.
Good point of clarification, too.
Exactly. It's very important to clarify that, because there's two different philosophies.
Well, in fact, you know, I finished my corporate career as the president of Canon in Chesapeake, Japanese-owned company. And the Japanese work culture is, you start for a company, you're there for life. Japanese, not necessarily the Americans, although we've seen Americans in Japanese firms that have also been there forever. But you look in the high technology arena, I mean, it used to be the average tenure of a job This is before the bubble burst and all that. Was 3 years.
Mhm.
You know, so continue on with your thoughts.
Yeah. So basically, our generation, and I saw an interesting statistic. Literally, people 35 years or younger will have over 35 to 40 different jobs in their lifetime.
That's crazy.
Right?
No kidding.
Right. Because the way the roles will change is you're either going to be a contractor or you're going to be the owner of a firm that is contracting the work out. And why? Because now you have technologies that can create efficiencies for you that you would have had to hire for in the past. And companies, large or small, are getting hip to these things. I can outsource labor to different countries now that can do just as good of a job or a better job than I can pay. Then I can get here that I'll be paying 100 and 120K for, right? And I don't have to pay benefits, and I don't have to worry about you taking sick days because I'm going from I'm moving from a place of employing massive amounts of people to working on specific projects, which is more efficient in time. It's more efficient in my use of dollars, and it's more efficient when considering creating a more nimble organization that can adapt to trends. So what I would tell people, for people coming out of school, is to learn a specific trade that you want to be very, very good at, because I think this is going to be something that we see across many different industries, especially when considering knowledge-based industries, which is in the IT services and health services and things of that nature, education, things that we see that are already seeing disruptions. Specialize in something in particular that makes you indisposable or makes you a master at, because then you can charge contract rates that give you a very you can increase your contract rates or create competitive contract rates, and that's where whether you want to be an entrepreneur or not, you can also make some side income until you figure out your way in this world, right? The other side of the coin is pick up a traditional technical trade, because I believe the plumbers and the carpenters and the welders, those people are going to be in high demand in the future, because of there's going to be a shift in knowledge workers who are going to be doing a lot of the technical side and architecture side of creating systems, and they're going to need the people that still know how to build things.
I'll tell you what. You say you've been in dialogues with people, and some people will disagree. Well, that's normal course and speed. But I agree with everything you've said. I have come to the belief that it's going to be the 21st century workforce has changed. I think it's, to summarize your point, it's going to be a lot of individual contractors, a lot of small businesses. You know, we've got a friend, Bill Crow, who's president of Virginia Ship Repair Association, not more than a couple blocks away. He talks all the time. He's going to have 20,000 jobs to fill over the next 5 years, and you know, and it's a different skill, and but there's nothing wrong with blue collar versus white collar, and that's a good living too.
It is,
and they
make great livings.
They make great livings. Yeah. You know, so and you know, and part of my past is coming from roles like that too. So in the early days, so I couldn't agree more. I think you're spot on.
Yeah,
I think so. Well, listen, we have I'm telling you, Byron, so far you get the prize. We're at 43 minutes and counting here. You have the longest interview, but I could talk to you for another hour.
You know, it's been fun. I could talk all day.
And the only reason I'm leaving right now is that my meter's expiring in about 5 minutes. So we're also going to publish a couple papers in our Future of Hampton Roads blog, and I think you are a bright, articulate, and creative young person. I'm thrilled that you're in Hampton Roads.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled that you're in Virginia, and I think that you're an outstanding role model for the younger community coming up. So thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, have a good day, everybody, and we'll see you at the next interview. Thank you, Byron.
Thank you.